moment.
Ready to vote?
Just wait for it to appear. Okay, we're live.
Good evening and welcome to Lithgow City Council Economic Development Committee, held in the Council Chambers on Tuesday, the 17th of May 2022. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land we're on here today and pay our respect to the elders both past, present and emerging. I inform all of those in attendance at this meeting that the meeting is being webcast and that those in attendance should refrain from making any defamatory statements concerning any person, council or employee, and refrain from discussing those matters subject to closed council proceedings as indicated in clause 14.1 on the Code of Meeting Practice. Thank you. Mr. General Manager, do we have any apologies this evening?
Mayor, we have apologies from Councillor Goodsell and Councillor McGee.
Could I have somebody,
sorry,
please?
We also have, and Councillor Goodwin, sorry, is going to dial in. And we also have Andrew Muir who will be dialing in for some of the presentations. We might just need to seek a little bit of indulgence because this is a public meeting where we're going in and out of people outside of here will be contributing to some of the presentations.
Can I have somebody please that those apologies be accepted? Councillor Marnie, a seconder, thank you. Councillor Sandra Coleman, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried, thank you. Staff reports.
So, Mayor, I thought what we might do with this, with it being a committee meeting, is that the officers just, if you like, I'm in your hands, but just perhaps move the councillors through the key content of the report and then open it up for discussion. I think with it being a committee, we can move through in that less formal manner.
I will accept that, thank you.
So for this first item, we have Simon Francis in attendance. We've got, I'm uncertain about whether Mr. Muir is in the background. If he is and needs to chime in, he will. Oh, there he is.
I'm here.
So I'll hand over to Simon.
Thank you. This first report is just seeking endorsement of the terms of reference for the Lithgow Regional Marketing Cooperative and endorsement for 5 new members. Following some resignations for various reasons, we have had to seek expressions of interest for new members of the Lithgow Regional Marketing Cooperative. And listed are the names of the people that we're looking for endorsement for. Kelly Crane, Naturally by Nature, Wendy Stevens, Bell by Bread and Breakfast, Emily Kirkwood, Hartley House, Emily Seliskar from Hometown Cafe, and Louise Clifton representing National Parks. Also included is an attachment which is the terms of reference for the Lithgow Regional Marketing Cooperative. Potentially the Seven Valleys Regional Marketing Cooperative, which we'll get to later. And it has some updated and strengthening of midterm appointments for a new members midterm. There was no reference in there to how to reappoint members or appoint new members outside of the 2-year term of the committee.
I think, Simon, if I could just chime in there, that has led to an obvious difficulty for the group to meet. So this was seen as something as a key moving forward.
Very happy to open this up for discussion or for some questions. Simon is here to answer any queries that you may have. Well, if there's no commentary.
I do thank you, Mayor. I do have a question. I note that in the the new members, and I notice there's no one from the broader environment group included in this. Is that because no one was interested, or is it because it's not an appropriate position?
Yeah, Councillor Leslie, a full expression of interest process was undertaken and no submissions were received from the local environment group. We were happy to have the National Parks submission, but yeah, unfortunately nothing from the local environment group.
Thank you, Simon. If there's no more discussion, please, could I have somebody move?
Was another question, perhaps, if I may.
Certainly.
I also note that we're wanting to change the name from something that seems quite reasonable, Lithgow Regional Marketing Cooperative, explaining exactly what it was, to the Seven Valleys Regional Marketing Cooperative. I'm not particularly comfortable with the Seven Valleys for a start. People are now starting to call it the Smelly Valleys, which in relation to our dash incinerator and at Wallerawang. So it doesn't necessarily have a good connotation about it. Perhaps we might need to rethink that name change.
So, Mayor and councillors, there's a subsequent item in the business paper that talks about the future direction of the Seven Valleys and provides some background. That would provide an opportunity for the full council, but certainly the new councillors, to be inducted into the background and the philosophy behind that Seven Valleys. I certainly know the previous council was very attracted to that brand proposition, and it's something that is. But anyway, we'll talk about it in the next item. So, if we, Mayor, if we were to deal with this item, we could exercise item number 1 if the council, if the committee's of that view for the moment, and then revisit that perhaps after the discussion later.
You're happy with that, Councillor Leslie?
I'll see what motion is moved, and I'll make my decision then.
Can I just make a brief comment?
Yes, certainly, Councillor Marnie.
Perhaps the items could have been in the other order to address some of those concerns, and we go through the intent of the Seven Valleys and then make that decision as that being the primary marketing point. I don't know if we've moved into the item, so I don't know whether that's an option.
Perhaps at this moment in time, point 1 on page 4, that point to be left as it is without going into, so 2, 3, and the names of the people. Could we have somebody please accept that the updated terms of reference outlined in this report and the new members of the cooperative being the following? Could I have somebody move, please, that they accept those new members? Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Seconded, Councillor Marnie. Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Against? Councillor Leslie, you're against this?
No, I intend to abstain on this one.
No worries whatsoever. That means negative. Item 3.2, the Economic Development Hassans Walls Trail running event. Simon?
We're just seeking approval for the Hassans Walls Trail running event. It is being run by Blue Mountains Trail Running, or Blue Mountains Fitness, which has been operating the Glowworm Tunnel Marathon for the past 7 or 8 years. They have a very good track record. They will be using existing tracks in the Hassans Walls Reserve. They'll also be potentially attracting a lot of people to stay and invest in accommodation and hospitality businesses in town. So, yeah, we see it as a good opportunity. You've also got the Bilpin Bush Run, which has been operating for a number of years, which is now no longer operating. So this is a great opportunity for the area to step in and host that and get those people to to be staying in the area and investing in the area.
Thank you, Simon. Are there any questions of any of the councillors? Councillor Marnie?
Firstly, thank you, and it's a pretty exciting event. I've just got a couple of questions. Is this a commercial operation, or
Simon?
is it a not-for-profit or a community?
Look, that is, I believe it is a commercial operation, yes.
Well, I'll put this question on notice.
Just a point of order, there's feedback in this room at the moment. I wonder if that could be fixed before we go on.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello.
Apologies for that. No, we still have the same problem.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello. 1, 2. 1, 2.
Testing. 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 Sounds great. Apologies to the public that are watching and to the councils for that unforeseen issue with the microphones this evening. I'll go back to Simon Francis to continue the discussion regarding Hassans Wall's trial running event. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Councillor Marnie.
Yeah, look, just as I was saying from the start, I think this is going to be obviously part of a continuing expansion of nature-based recreation. It's something that I certainly support if it's done in a sustainable way. A couple of points I just want to ask questions on. Given that we're operating on Crown lands and we're having a commercial operation, I know this issue has been brought in front of council before, but it is something that we need to address as far as the nature-based recreation licensing scheme to permit those commercial activities on our reserves. I'm not sure whether we'll be in a position to have something in place by the date that's proposed, but that certainly needs to be part of our thinking going forward. This isn't going to be an isolated event. I'd suggest these will become more commonplace in the immediate region, mountain biking as well, so also climbing and abseiling. So the other thing is just that I've noted in the report that staff will do an assessment as far as, I know there's a number of rare plant populations. We've got copperwing butterfly habitat in points, as well as a number of significant local vegetation and individual species. So So I suppose I'm posing a question, are we looking at or considering a nature-based licence recreation scheme? And it also brings in an income to council who is the end manager of the assets and also has to do maintenance on those assets.
Mr Francis, thank you.
Look, in relation to the environmental impact, I believe that the company is undertaken to do every risk assessment in terms of using and utilising existing tracks and protection mechanisms for any rare and endangered species of flora and fauna. In terms of the first part of your question, I would defer to Mr Muir, who may be able to give a more definitive answer than I can on that. I believe he is online.
I think we're having some problems there, but I think I can canvass this. Look,
Yeah, but I couldn't hear the question. Could someone just put the
look,
question
I think,
again?
let me have a go at this. The matter's here for information. The event's coming up. We just wanted to canvass the mood and temperature of the council to this. Certainly would have to be conducted in accordance with the plan of management for this Crown land, and it would also be subject, and council's planners and environmental people would be ensuring that the activity obtains the appropriate environmental assessment and approvals. So I could take it on notice, and Councillor Andrew Muir or Mr Francis can provide further advice. But the event won't be occurring unless it has all of the appropriate environmental approvals and it's consistent with plan management. And as for the other issue, we can bring back a report. I think that's a work in progress. The study of a user fee for events in natural areas.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Thank you, General Manager. Is there anybody else? Councillor Rice, thank you.
It's 20th of August 2022, isn't it? Not 20, obviously. Is that correct? Yeah, that's all.
Absolutely, yes.
Anybody else wishing to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to congratulate the person who wrote this. There's no name on this, so but that's a great start. It's certainly something that I've been keen on, having the Hassans Walls running track. The date, it's in the body of the report there, the August the 20th, 2022 is there. We also need to take into account other statewide events there, and the one I'm thinking, of course, is the City to Surf. Do we know when that is, for example? Because I had envisaged that we would have a run along up Hassans Walls, across, and then back through the Vale of Clwyd, back a circular run. I think that's part of the processes here. And later on, I'd like a little bit more details of just where the 6 kilometre, 11 kilometre and 22 kilometre runs would go. I've actually driven around that route, and it's 12 kilometres. So the 11 kilometres is probably accurate there. Around that from Coles back to Coles, really. That's where I was thinking. There's a big car park there. Maybe that would be used. So is that? And therefore, I thought, well, here's an opportunity for keen runners right across the state to come to Lithgow, to test out their fitness before they do the City to Surf, and that would be good. And Councillor Coleman, Councillor Goodsell, they're not here now, were in the Walgan Valley on Sunday at a meeting down there about their community shed, and the people who were there were talking about just how many people they get in the Walgan Valley camping as a result of the runs that, the glowworm tunnel runs, and how great that is, and I think it's terrific that we can be building on that and doing it. But so, well, that's the first question. When's the city to surf? And secondly, just for because it's not whilst we've got it, because we are on video, it would be, I think it would be beneficial to actually just state where those runs would be starting and finishing, for the ones that are going up to the Hassans Walls, if possible.
Mr. Francis.
The City to Surf, I believe, is taking place on the 14th of August.
So
It-
this might be a way for people to wind down.
Have a wind down, absolutely.
Fair
Get
enough.
out of the city and come and get some lovely fresh country air, and spend in our cafes and restaurants and our accommodation establishments. It's a great opportunity, a multi-layered event, as you alluded to there, that you've got anything from beginner runners right up to ultra marathon people. So the scope of people that will attract is great, and everybody's in the peak of their fitness, having just done the City to Surf, and then they can come to Lithgow. So
Actually, I don't usually take part in the debate, but I heard at a function in Bathurst on Saturday night that the World Cross Country Championships are in Bathurst sometime next year around the middle of the year. So that also will benefit Lithgow with accommodation. So that's good news for everyone there. This is a great commentary. Any other questions, please? Can I have somebody move that we accept?
Well, but I didn't actually get, if I may, sorry, I didn't actually get an answer to where those different runs would be starting and finishing. If that's known, if it's not known, I understand that. But if it is known or envisaged, that would be helpful.
look, once again, I would defer to Mr. Muir, who may have been briefed by my colleague Robbie Park, who has been more in contact with the organisers from Blue Mountains Fitness than I have to this point. Look, I believe all runs are starting and finishing from the Pony Club, and will utilise existing tracks across the Hassans Walls Reserve. I can't give you total details of where those tracks go to. Clearly, a lot of them are along the ridge lines behind Coles and across to behind the rifle range and back. But I don't know whether Mr. Muir might be more aware of where some of those tracks are, or whether we need to take that on notice.
Can I be heard? Can you hear me? Hang on. Are you on the phone, Trinity? Can you hear me? Okay. My understanding, if I could be heard, is similar to Simon's. This is all developing very quickly, of course, but starting and finishing, my understanding, is via the Pony Club.
Turn off the mute your computer.
Perhaps with Councillor Leslie's
Sorry?
agreement.
I think we might take that on notice, please, Councillor Leslie, and a staff member will get back to you with the dates when available. Thank you. Any other questions, please? Can I have somebody move the recommendation, please? Thank you. Councillor Bryce, Councillor O'Connor seconded. All those in favour say aye. Thank you. 3.3, page 7, the Economic Development Committee Future Direction of the Seven Valleys concept. We'll discuss this report, and Councillor Leslie, if you would like to discuss point 1 on the first item, that would be very acceptable. Thank you. All right. Simon Francis will speak to this, and then we'll have questions. Thank you.
The Seven Valleys has been a marketing concept up to this point, and then a council endorsed marketing concept. And it has been something that has been mooted as turning into more of a brand than a a marketing concept. So currently we kind of have two brands for tourism delivery, which are brand Lithgow and brand Seven Valleys. They've kind of been working in conjunction in certain ways because we have Lithgow Tourism and Events Facebook page, Instagram, like social media. We also have the website, which is still domain name Lithgow. So we have both at the moment, but we've had campaigns in the past which have just been purely Lithgow branded. We had the Lithgow 360 and a kind of Lithgow Never Normal campaign that we're calling it Never Normal. Both of which were held at different times. A lot more positivity for the most recent Lithgow one. That is mentioned in a report from Leonard's Advertising that is an attachment. The budget for that marketing campaign was far more than the budget is at the moment, but the figures are very similar in comparison. So for less budget, under the Seven Valleys has achieved just as many likes, click-throughs, and all the different measures of success for the campaign. We have also been canvassing the local industry through the Lithgow Regional Marketing Cooperative, also amongst tourism operators, myself. At the Visitor Information Centre, we have been holding informal surveys of people in the best way we can, with the best use of the resources that we have to see what the sentiment is behind Seven Valleys versus Lithgow. And the response has been overwhelmingly positive, that Seven Valleys is a holistic approach to marketing the area. What exists at the moment is a little bit of a disconnect between certain areas of the local government area. So, for instance, the Cape Dee Valley has, as a generalisation, felt a disconnect from brand Lithgow. They've not felt that brand Lithgow represents them. As with Taranaar Valley and quite a few of the other areas of the tourism and LGA. So what Seven Valleys is designed to provide a holistic approach to marketing of the area. Think Blue Mountains, think Southern Highlands. It's a geographical area, not in any way intended to replace Lithgow City Council as a name for the LGA. It's purely for tourism purposes, to help people buy into the brand. So we've got operators who are named in the report. I won't name now in the public domain, who are leveraging off different areas. So we've got people leveraging off the Blue Mountains. We've got people in the north of the LGA who are leveraging off Mudgee. And so what we're trying to do within the confines of what we have to play with is to provide them with a brand that they truly feel represented by and that they would like to leverage off. There are examples of future projects, even future businesses coming to the LGA who are looking to use Seven Valleys. And Seven Valleys has been, the actual logo has been trademarked. So we are actually the owners of the Seven Valleys trademark as well. It has been used in campaigns. It's being used on the website at the moment. I do have some examples to show of the campaign as it is at the moment. So the thinking behind this is to try and maximise the exposure of Seven Valleys brands, if adopted and suitable. The idea, pardon me, is to use the best use of freely available resources, and to go with Seven Valleys, if deemed suitable, would mean that we can get that name out to as many people as possible. So therefore, for tourism purposes, if people are looking at the Facebook page and it is branded Seven Valleys tourism and events as opposed to Lithgow tourism and events. If Lithgow Visitor Centre domain name and everything like that was to be changed to Seven Valleys, then that name Seven Valleys then becomes something that people can't miss, can't ignore, and over time, Seven Valleys becomes something that is known as the area. In the same way as Blue Mountains or Southern Highlands or Scenic Rim or any of those areas that have a kind of generic name, an umbrella brand that sits over the top of kind of the LGA name or the major town of the area. So yeah, what we're seeking is discussion, hopefully approval of rebranding Lithgow Tourism to Seven Valleys Tourism and pushing ahead with a brand that at the moment shows huge potential and yeah, has been certainly overachieving in terms of the fact that the last Lithgow campaign was set against a backdrop of huge enthusiasm post the first lockdown of COVID. We saw our biggest numbers ever then. Since then, there's been obviously a little bit more negativity towards lockdowns and whether people are going to be able to travel. So to be achieving numbers that are comparable to that with Seven Valleys is, I think, good evidence that we are on the right track. So yeah, just seeking a discussion and endorsement on the merits of using Seven Valleys as a tourism brand.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. So we'll open this up for some discussion with the councillors, please. So anybody wishing to speak, please feel free to do so.
I
Yes,
think
Carl.
it's a terrific name for the thing, and it's perfect, suits the area.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Anybody else wishing to speak tonight?
Yeah, Mayor Statham, Darryl Goodwin online.
Yeah, I'll make a brief comment and
Yes,
question.
Councillor Marnie.
Look, I see one of the big differentials between the Blue Mountains experience and the Lithgow region experience is very much that mix of agricultural. We've got lots of the natural environment where we border on to World Heritage areas. We've got all those natural values that exist in the Blue Mountains, but what we do have that really differentiates us is the visitor opportunities. Staying in the Kanimbla Valley or staying in the Kapiti or Wolgan Valley, they present something that's quite unique. So I understand the focus on the Seven Valleys. It's also got some linkage into very old stories such as the Pleiades, the Seven Star constellation, and the Seven Sisters. There's lots of sort of pathways through into this concept. So I know there's mixed feeling about it. People talk to me and they've got mixed, but I'm willing to put some support behind it. I hope that we can really build on that farm stay, that agriculture, natural area, Gardens of Stone, spend a week or two. It becomes a place to stay rather than a place to drive to someone else through. So I'm optimistic about that. I've just got a question about the trademarking. If I was to go and set up my interest of making cider, if I was to come out with a Seven Valley cider, where does that trademark sit, given that I'm seeing it appearing like we've obviously got a Seven Valleys hotel, and if someone else spoke to me about they want to promote their meat production as being a specific regional thing coming out of the Seven Valleys, how does that trademark play out with other people utilising it?
Mr. Francis?
Yeah, look, as mentioned before, the more legitimate operators we can get to leverage off that brand would be great. If we can get new businesses and even existing businesses to start calling themselves Seven Valleys, that just adds to the value of the brand. It is trademarked for tourism information services at the moment. So yeah, we are the holders of the trademark. We are the holders of the style guide. We do have a developed style guide as well. So if in negotiations with operators under the right circumstances, we would obviously be looking towards operators being able to buy into the brand.
Yeah, just to add to that, the trademark was taken out not for the purpose of restricting and holding this close to council. In fact, the measure of whether it resonates will be the extent to which it's taken up by businesses and others that are allied to the Seven Valleys brand or to the well-being of the city. And we hope that we don't have to use some legal rights that we get from trademarking to restrict the use of it. In fact, we're very much encouraging, to the extent that businesses and others are aligned and not compromising that brand, we would be very comfortable with them using it, where we will develop style guides and other such things, so that we push this out and in a mature and a responsible way, others run with the brand. So, for instance, if I'm a tourism operator, I might hang the Seven Valleys subject to checking in with the council that the style and its use is compatible with our ambitions. We would certainly endorse that. If it was a dubious operator and if if it was conveying the wrong impression of Seven Valleys, we may, under one scenario, look to enforce and restrict that party from using the Seven Valleys brand. But our intention is for responsible people and businesses that can carry the brand of Lithgow forward in an outward positive projecting way to use the Seven Valleys brand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager.
Just one quick follow-up. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes,
if that's
Councillor
okay.
Marnie.
Yeah, look, I certainly like that approach. As we're fast finding, we're probably the first food production landscape now west of, Sydney now, that as Western Sydney starts to disappear under housing development. So I know there's lots of people looking to produce high value, high quality food and meats, and you've got opportunities for organic farmers and growers. They place themselves, if we're looking at this through that lens, as a marketing for a clean and green future for Lithgow, the region, and we're seeing that on-farm business starting to build. So I think there's lots of possibilities for that sector if we deliver this right.
Yeah, I think you're right. So I think you're describing provenance, and relating agriculture to provenance, and that's what a brand can do. Sometimes sometimes the integrity and the product comes first. Well, our geography is the product, and we're merely assigning a brand to it. I've never been to the Scenic Rim, which sits outside Ipswich, but it's a place that I want to go to because it just conveys an evocative image. And that's what brands can do. And I think that's what the Seven Valleys is looking at doing, is from my understanding.
And we find ourselves just to the west of the biggest metropolitan centre on this continent. So we're well positioned if we make good decisions.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Goodwin would like to have the next statement read out by Trinity. So we'll switch our microphones off so that we can hear Trinity quite well.
On behalf of Councillor Goodwin, I'm happy with the branding. I was under the impression we were already using it as a branding. I'm getting very good responses from the community about the branding of the Seven Valleys. I fully support this brand.
Thank you, Trinity. On behalf of Councillor Goodwin, thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Anybody else wishing to speak to this? Councillor Leslie?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm travelling back from Bathurst the other day, and which I do on a regular basis. I do try to see the sign saying "Welcome to Lithgow," and finally I saw it. I miss it every time, and it's just as you would know, Mayor, just to the west of Meadow Flat, of course. But is it envisaged that these signs would incorporate this this logo and be a little bit more prominent and a bit more sort of welcoming, rather than the very small one we have now that's hidden away in somebody's paddock. And of course, we'd also need to do that on every other of the main access into Lithgow, just to indicate that this is on. So is that been looked at?
I might be able to answer that, Mayor Leslie. I've been talking to the General Manager and to other parties interested in the new signage entering lots of different areas of our local government area. Whether that can be added to the signage or not, I don't know, but I'm sure it could be if you think that's a good idea. We'll know more about the signage in the next couple of weeks. Mr. Francis, could you add to that? Do you know if that will be accepted to be on the?
Look, yeah, I think it has to be on there. I think the major component of the LGA entrance signage has to be welcome to Lithgow. The LGA is Lithgow City Council, after all. A representation from our tourism brand of Seven Valleys on there is a great thing to have. Part of the report is proposing a style guide so that people can come and visit the Seven Valleys. They know when they're in the Lithgow LGA, they know when they're in the Seven Valleys, and they know that signage that is either interpretive or directional or interpretive signage looks and feels the same, so that people can move around the LGA with confidence that they're getting that brand talking to them, and it looks and feels the same and looks great and professional. It's not you don't have to have your binoculars to see the sign, it needs to be in as many places as we possibly can for that brand ownership. Really, as many places, even back roads, that we can to let people know that they are entering this special area.
I think just to add to that, we're looking to bring it to life in as many ways as possible with others carrying that brand. We don't come here with fully developed views, but I certainly recognise in Lithgow, and particularly in the different villages and places, there's a strong identification with place and the history and that name. But what we need to do, I think, is find, in the example Councillor Leslie speaking to, a comfort so they talk to one another. So, you would still have, for instance, Portland, but you would find a place within the signage for that Seven Valleys also. So they play together, and every time a person sees a sign, it has that subliminal sort of repeat messaging about Seven Valleys. But I think what we'll be doing is certainly coming back many times to this committee with different expressions and ideas of how to expand the Seven Valleys concept.
If I may, Mayor Statham, I do have a question.
I might just read this out, Councillor Coleman. So page 8, future resources needed, brand strategy, approximately $20,000. Destination management plan, strategic plan, approximately $50,000 needed regardless of rebranding. Signage, strategy, style guide, approximately $20,000 to provide a comprehensive coverage of the LGA and town entrance signage. Directional and interpretive signage across the LGA with the same look, feel and branding, Lithgow LGA name, predominant on LGA entrance signage. So I think that really says it all, that there will be, as Mr. Francis has stated, it's imperative that we put the Seven Valleys front and centre, as well as the name of the village or the town. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. It just states in the launch part of the report, organised unveiling of the Seven Valleys brand. A small amount of budget may be needed to allocate towards the launch of the brand, which is an ideal time to make maximum exposure for the new brand. What does that look like? Is that an event? Or I understand in the early parts of the report, you're mentioning local national media, social media, influencers, and so forth and so forth. But I'm really keen to understand organised unveiling of the Seven Valleys brand. How does that actually look like? What does that actually look like? Sorry.
The unveiling of the brand needs to be multifaceted, I believe. It needs to be, in particular in the national media. It's something we want to make the maximum amount of noise for. There are some events coming up in September. Now, look, I'm not making any presumptions to any timeframes whatsoever, but we would probably be looking to try and maximise the exposure of events to also be having launches for the Seven Valleys, giving a reason to national media to come and advertise the rebranding of the tourism name from Lithgow to Seven Valleys. So yeah, look, it would be combined with other events, or if possible, a major unveiling of the brand.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. You're happy with that, Councillor Coleman? Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on this subject? So can I put please the recommendation that the Seven Valleys be endorsed as a tourism brand and adopted by Lithgow Tourism for use in all administrative and marketing capacities of Seven Valleys Tourism and Events as outlined in the recommended actions part of this report.
I'm happy to move that.
Thank you. A seconder, thank you.
Yep, second.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Now I'll go back to item 1, which now has really spoken for itself because we've just now adopted on page 9 at the bottom the recommendations be endorsed as a tourism brand and adopted by Lithgow Tourism. So I assume if Councillor Leslie is happy with that, number 1 now just automatically becomes the Seven Valleys Regional Marketing Cooperative. Does everyone agree with that, please? All those in favour, please? Against? You're not voting, Councillor Leslie?
Well, I'm wondering what we are voting on because we certainly didn't put the motion in relation to this particular item we're dealing with now. This is
a separate motion, as I said before.
We have a motion.
Excuse me, Councillor Leslie, for a moment. We've voted on points 2 and the recommendation on page 4, and then that recommendation then didn't get with number point 1. We didn't do that, but I believe now when you say that you've voted on the main area of the councillors have voted on the Seven Valleys be endorsed as a tourism brand and adopted by Lithgow Tourism. I would assume that then it would be very difficult not to say that point 1 would flow on from that. So can I have some discussion on that, please, if anybody wishes to speak to that?
Yeah, so just to be clear.
Councillor Leslie, would you like to speak to that, please?
So
the recommendation at the bottom of page 9 was never voted on.
Oh, okay.
I think if you look at the video, you will find that no hands went up one way or the other.
Haven't voted? All right, I'm sorry.
it was my interpretation that we took the vote, Mayor, but we will do it again to be abundantly cautious. And I think what you're then proposing is that we return to item 1, and the council during the course of the meeting can return to a matter and amend an original motion during the course of this meeting. So I think if we deal with, again, with the vote on this matter on the recommendation on page 10, and then we can return.
No.
Let's stand in the hard copy.
Yeah. Page 9 then, if the councillors can just read the recommendation. I won't repeat that recommendation. Can I please have somebody then? We've got Councillor O'Connor seconded. Councillor Coleman moved the motion. Can I please have a show of hands? Thank you. The Councillor Leslie is not voting. Anybody against? All those in favour say aye. Thank you. Just check that. That's been carried. Thank you. So then we go back to page 4. And item 1, it can be discussed. I'm hope, if you would like discussion, no problem whatsoever. But it seems to me that if you're happy to move on page 9, this would automatically just run in with the other point that we've just moved and seconded. So does everybody agree with that, or would you like me to put that again? So point 1 on page 4, any discussion, please?
I might just make a quick comment. My understanding from Mr. Francis' presentation is that each of the individual items will retain their unique characteristic, like Portland, the Gardens of Stone. They'll all carry their own character with this overarching branding. So I'm optimistic that we can still retain the individuality of those localities, but somewhat like the Hunter Valley, I'm sort of imagining that's the pathway we're heading, that we want people to look at it as a specific region. So if that's my understanding.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Yes.
Yeah, look,
Thank you.
I totally concur with that. That it will, I believe, strengthen the individual brands sitting underneath that umbrella brand. It gives that strength in inclusion that maybe is not seen at the moment under Seven Valleys.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. The General Manager has suggested that if nobody else wishes to speak, I'll get a mover and a seconder, please, for the recommendation on page 4.
Move that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. A seconded, thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. All those in favour say aye. Councillor Leslie, you're not voting? Okay, thank you. Anybody against? No. So that's moved. Thank you, and seconded. Page 10. The Economic Development Committee meeting, Regional Economic Development Strategies, REDS report. Thank you, Mr. General Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. Yeah, and I speak to this in the absence of Mr. Muir due to illness and difficulties with him dialing in. It's merely a report which advises that the New South Wales government is with some haste reviewing what are called the Regional Economic Development Strategies. They were first developed back in 2018. A little bit uniquely, Lithgow has its own, was identified as having its own functional economic region. It's not Western Sydney, it's not the Blue Mountains, and nor is it agriculturally based, the Central West. So it has a different economic sort of relationship. And so it's got a standalone strategy. So in a short burst of time, the government with consultant advisors will be undertaking some consultation on how successful the regional economic development strategies have been. Council officers will participate in that process at the earliest opportunity by way of memorandum, and then subsequent reports to council. We will develop a position and test that and have that sanctioned by the council. I think it is an opportunity. Of course, it intersects well with the work we're doing to develop an action plan for our future economy. I think it intersects also with the submissions council has recently made on the regional plan and the state government's long-term strategy. And I'm a firm believer that you need to play a long game and a big game and influence these documents that guide the focus of government. And so we would be, again, looking for the right language and the big strategic references to what Lithgow's future should be. But I don't have anything else to add at this point other than to say that we will be bringing back more information. But if councillors from the briefings they've received had any matters they wanted to raise or ideas they wanted to promote about the tone of our submission or what we take into the discussions, I'd be happy to receive that sort of advice also.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. If councillors would like to have some discussion with this evening, you're very welcome. Anybody have any questions at all? On page 11, the recommendation says that the information on the update regional economic development strategies be received. Could I have a mover, please?
Happy to move that one.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll
Councillor
second
Marnie? Oh, I think Councillor Marnie was in there. Councillor Bryce. All those in favour say aye. Thank you. Unanimous. Economic Development Property Portfolio. This one.
So Trinity, does the mayor have the words to read out in terms of moving into closed session of the committee?
Somebody move it under closed council.
Mayor, just for the public record, as we indicate, some of the content and discussion in the next item is commercially sensitive. So it would be appropriate within the terms of the Local Government Act for the council to resolve to move into a closed session of this committee to receive that information which is confidential.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. Could I have somebody please move? We move into.
Happy to move into
Thank you,
closed
Councillor
council.
Coleman. Have a second to Councillor O'Connor, was it? Thank you. All those in favour say aye.